The sky was on fire. Captain Maravas stood on the shattered observation deck of Europa Station, watching the chaos unfold beyond the reinforced transparisteel. 1,000 kilometers away, the colony moon of Titan was erupting into silent light. The Dominion's fusion lances had found their mark again. The feed from Titan's surface had cut out 30 seconds ago. Before that, the screams of civilians had poured through the comms. Now there was only static and an expanding debris cloud where the city hubs had once gleamed. She gripped the railing until her knuckles turned white, the cold of Europa's void-chilled atmosphere stinging her face through the hairline fracture in her helmet. Power was failing, backup systems were failing, and Earth hadn't responded to her last 12 transmissions. "Report," she barked, not taking her eyes off the hellscape beyond. Lieutenant Gresham stumbled into the command ring, bleeding from a long gash across his cheek. His armor was scorched, smeared with soot and coolant. "Main reactors offline. The docking rings venting. The fusion torches are gone, ma'am. So is half the crew." Mara closed her eyes. Just for a second. Just long enough to whisper a silent apology to everyone she couldn't save. The Dominion had arrived 3 days ago. No warning. No negotiations. No declaration of war. Just wave after wave of cold, clinical annihilation. Europa Station had been on the outer defensive ring of the Sol system. Now, it was the last orbital platform standing, and it wouldn't be for long. "Evacuate whoever's left," she said. "Get them to the escape drops. Aim them for Mars, if you can. But the Dominion's in orbit. Then they'll die on their feet. Move." Gresham hesitated, then saluted. "Yes, ma'am." He vanished into the smoke. Mara turned back to the viewport. Titan's ruins still burned, casting a pale glow on the wreckage of 3 United Nations defense fleet cruisers, Yamamoto, Karachi, and St. George, drifting lifeless in the black. She tapped her comms. "Earth, this is Captain Maravas of Europa Station. Titan is gone. I say again, Titan is gone. We are the last station still transmitting. We estimate 12 hours before Dominion main force hits Earth's orbital defenses. Requesting immediate strategic response. Earth, please." Static. Mara lowered the transmitter and breathed out slowly. She wasn't a politician, not a diplomat. She was a warfighter, a soldier trained in orbital tactics, fusion core sabotage, and breach warfare. And right now, she was watching her civilization burn from the sidelines. That didn't sit right with her. On Earth, across oceans of fire and miles of dead air, General Elias Reyes stood inside a makeshift war bunker beneath the old UN headquarters in Geneva. The feed from Europa Station flickered across the dusty holoscreen. "She's still alive," Reyes muttered. "That's one thing." "She won't be for long," said Admiral Sarandar beside him, her face lit by the flicker of orbital heat maps. "The Dominion's using precision orbital drops, plasma spears, fusion craters. No survivors, no prisoners." "Why us?" Reyes whispered. "Because we don't die easy," she said simply. Across the bunker's display wall, dozens of feeds showed the reality. Entire cities reduced to bones. Lagos, New Mumbai, Neo Cairo, all vaporized in a matter of hours. The Dominion wasn't sending occupation forces. They weren't taking resources. They were erasing humanity from existence. Back on Europa Station, the evacuation had turned into chaos. The station groaned under its own dying weight. Artificial gravity flickered, sending Marines and civilians slamming into bulkheads and walls. Maravas stalked through the smoke with a plasma rifle slung over one shoulder and a hand on a fallen comrade's shoulder. She looked down. Lieutenant Aresley Park, dead. A shard of hull plating jutted from her throat, her eyes wide and glassy. Mara didn't blink. She kept walking. There was no room left for grief. A klaxon began to wail. Not the evacuation alarm. Not the decompression signal. No, this one was older, deeper. It was the station's impact warning. The Dominion had arrived. From the docking ring, Private Duval screamed into the all-hands channel. "They're coming in hot. Boarding pods, 7 of them. No escort. They're punching through the hole." Mara raced toward the eastern access tunnel, her boots pounding on metal. All around her, Marines scrambled. Some carried weapons. Some just carried wounded. None were ready. She activated her comms again. "Reyes, Earth, Dominion boarding Europa. We are under siege. If anyone can hear this, humanity is not done fighting." She passed a dead engineer slumped against the wall and ripped the fusion core pistol from his belt. The Dominion soldiers weren't like anything they'd trained for. When they breached the hull, they came in silence. No war cries, No screams, just gliding, insectal brutes covered in bone plate and pulsing with red light. Their weapons were living things, spike launchers, tendril whips, sonic disruptors that turned human skulls to paste. The first wave hit the reactor chamber. Mara was waiting. She opened fire at point-blank range, her pistol barking like thunder in the echoing steel chamber. Her shots tore through one of the Dominion creatures, spraying viscous blue ichor. It hissed and died, but another took its place. And another. Hold the line, she screamed. They didn't hold the line. They became the line. 4 Marines died in the first 10 seconds. One was torn apart by a serrated claw. Another had her head turned backward by a crushing kinetic blast. But still they fought. Still they clawed back. Private Duval rammed a grenade into the mouth of one of the creatures and tackled it into a vent shaft. The explosion vaporized them both. Sergeant Juno, bleeding from 3 wounds, used her last seconds to close a pressure door manually, sealing herself inside with a Dominion beast. Mara dragged herself over a corpse-strewn walkway and used a shattered beam to crush one of the invaders. Its skull split like overripe fruit. She was down to her last magazine. Captain. Gresham's voice came through the smoke. The pods summated out. Civilians are away. Mara nodded, blood dripping from her lip. Then we've done our part. A tremor shook the station. One of the remaining power cores had gone critical. The heat rose around them like the breath of a dragon. And then silence. The Dominion had pulled back. Mara stood in the wreckage of the control chamber, panting. Gresham limped beside her. They think we're dead, he said. They're not far off. No. But they'll learn. Mara staggered to her feet and looked out the shattered viewport once more. Earth glimmered far below. Blue, bright, still untouched. Tell them, she said. Tell Earth what happened here. I think they already know. He held up a comlink. The red light blinked. Connected. A deep voice crackled through. This is General Reyes, Europa Station. Captain Voss. You are not alone. Mara smiled. Her hands were broken, her armor scorched, her squad dead. But humanity was still alive. And as long as one human still drew breath, the fight was not over. The war wasn't just in orbit anymore. It had come home. The burning remains of New Istanbul smoldered under a black sky, dust choking the air, and the smell of melted concrete and charred flesh coating every breath. Smoke rose in pillars across what had once been a city of 10 million. Now, it was rubble stitched with fire and blood. Sergeant Mikhail Brenner coughed into a torn scarf as he hunkered behind a collapsed support beam, plasma bolts scorching the air above his head. His squad had been cut off since 0300. No reinforcements, no air cover, just 6 humans with scavenged gear and half a box of munitions between them, trying to hold the line in a war that had already erased their command structure. Next to him, Private Janica Torres bled from a shredded bicep. She hadn't complained. She just tied it off with a power cable and kept loading her rifle with shaking hands. They're flanking east, she hissed. I know, Brenner said grimly. Let him come. The Dominion weren't subtle anymore. Their heavy infantry, 12 feet tall, armored in iridescent carapace and fused with biomechanical limbs, were pounding through the ruins with seismic footsteps. Each movement cracked pavement and sent masonry tumbling. From behind their lines came the mind thralls, humans infected with Dominion neurospikes, their minds overwritten with alien protocol. They moved like puppets, blank eyes, twisted limbs. They spoke in guttural Dominion screeches, but Brenner didn't hate them. He hated the ones controlling them. A blast shook the rubble behind them as an orbital drop spike plunged through a collapsed apartment tower, ejecting Dominion infantry like spores. 4-legged assault beasts sprinted into the fray, their bodies covered in chitin and acid glands, ripping apart human barricades in seconds. Brenner didn't flinch. He whispered into his comm bead. Alpha point, on my mark. Hold steady. Janica raised her rifle. They've got numbers, Mikhail. We've got spite. The Dominion surged forward. Brenner gave the signal. 2 survivors popped up from adjacent rubble mounds and opened fire with jury-rigged coil guns. One Dominion warrior dropped with a hole punched clean through its midsection. Another stumbled into a rigged microwave mine. Its carapace shattered, showering the squad in bone shards. The humans didn't retreat. They didn't scream. They kept shooting. When the ammo ran dry, Janica pulled a kitchen knife from her belt and drove it into a Dominion thrall's neck, using her last strength to rip the implant free. The body fell twitching. When Brenner's rifle overheated, he tossed it and picked up a broken pipe. They held the intersection for 4 more minutes, long enough for the last of the refugee convoy to get through the sewers under their position. When it was over, Brenner stood amidst the corpses of 12 Dominion troopers for beasts and 2 of his own squad. "We hold," he muttered, smearing the ichor from his eyes. "We always ing hold." At a UNDF command outpost in the Alps, Commander Anika Reyes, daughter of General Elias Reyes, watched the battle feeds flood in from across the globe. Rio de Janeiro was burning. Entire favelas had turned into trench systems. Guerrilla cells were using the hills to launch ambushes on Dominion patrols. A half-trained group of local militias, farmers, teachers, mechanics, had brought down a Dominion transport with Molotovs and a stolen mining laser. In Nairobi, street gangs had joined with police forces to form resistance squads. In Osaka, martial artists and old men with katanas were fighting side by side with Marine units, clearing Dominion holdouts from subway tunnels. In Detroit, Reyes watched a 10-year-old boy run up to a wounded Dominion soldier with a belt of homemade pipe bombs and pull the trigger. The screen went black. She gritted her teeth. "These aren't soldiers," her aide muttered beside her. "They're just people." "No," Reyes said softly. "They're humans." Her comlink beeped. A voice crackled through, distorted, tired, but unmistakably alive. "Maravas, Europa Station. We've got survivors. We need to get back in the fight." Reyes' eyes lit up. "Then we give them a war." In the deep frost of the Scandinavian wild zones, a different kind of fight was raging. Lieutenant Ava Zhang crouched in the ruins of a frozen hydro plant with her recon team, silently watching the Dominion dropship touch down in a clearing below. Snow blew in gusts, burying human tracks and scattering heat signatures. Perfect cover. Zhang smiled grimly. "Load up," she whispered. Her team were ghosts, painted in thermal-reflective gray, armed with silent knives, ice-piercing rounds, and fury in their hearts. No official orders, no supply drops, just vengeance. They moved like shadows. By the time the Dominion sentries registered the breach, Zhang had already slipped behind the first target and driven a carbon blade into its spine. Another went down with a silent burst to the back of its skull. When the Dominion commander tried to signal for reinforcements, Specialist Harkins tackled him and shoved a snow-packed mine into his mouth. The detonation was muffled by his collapsing chest cavity. In 20 minutes, the Dominion drop team was gone, torn apart, gutted, or frozen where they fell. Zhang stood over the wreckage. "No backups coming for you," she whispered. "You came here thinking we were prey. We're not." She activated her beacon. The signal flared through the ionosphere. "Message to all resistance cells. The snow wolves have returned. The North is not dead. Fight. Survive. End them." Deep in the bowels of Mount Weather, General Reyes stood before a room full of ragged, battle-worn commanders from every nation and background. Some were cybernetically enhanced. Some were missing limbs. All bore scars. He spoke with no preamble. "The Dominion thinks we're broken." He let the silence linger. "They've cracked our fleets, shattered our cities, taken our children. They think we're animals, lashing out in fear. But they forgot who we are." He pointed to the map projected above them, highlighting resistance pockets, refugee sanctuaries, guerrilla networks. "They forgot how we fight. When the skies fall, we dig trenches. When the fire rains, we shelter the weak and arm the strong. When they say surrender, we spit blood and reload." He looked them each in the eye. "This is not a war for territory. It's not about survival. It's about identity. We are human, and we do not break." The room erupted in response. "Let them come," Reyes roared. "Let them burn our homes. They will never burn our spirit. From the gutters of Detroit to the ruins of Titan, we will fight." One commander shouted. "Even if we die?" Reyes smiled coldly. "Then we die on our feet, so our children have a chance to rise." At the edge of Earth's magnetosphere, Mara Voss limped aboard the last surviving UNDF frigate, the Resolute. It was a wreck, pockmarked, flickering, but alive. She stood on the bridge with an old rifle in her hands and scars running down her face. "You've been reassigned," the deck officer said. "You're leading a special unit, frontline insertion. High-risk ops." She nodded. "Name of the unit?" The officer hesitated, then handed her a datapad. She read it, smirked. "The Breakers." Mara looked out the viewport at Earth far below. A world battered, but burning bright. "Let's give them hell." They told the prisoners they were being relocated. That was the lie whispered into the battered ears of 1,000 men, women, and children, crammed into the Dominion transport barge Zervatha 12. Shackled, drugged, bruised, but not broken. Some had been taken from colonies in the Kuiper Belt. Others had been dragged out of the ruins of Earth's cities. A few were soldiers. Most were civilians. None of them had given up. Lieutenant Jonah Cade crouched in the darkness of the transport's vent crawlspace, naked from the waist up, skin smeared with thermal gel to beat Dominion heat scans. His eyes burned from 3 days without sleep. His ribs ached. He'd broken 2 of them in the last fight on Phobos. He had no weapons, no armor, no implants. But he had one thing the Dominion never understood: hate and purpose. They hadn't checked the ventilation system properly when they threw him in with the others. The Dominion didn't see humans as a threat anymore. Not the ones in chains. Not the ones bleeding and silent. They were to be dissected, displayed, executed. Jonah wasn't about to let them have that satisfaction. Below him, the prison barge rumbled through hyperspace, its hull echoing with low thuds and the hum of alien machinery. The prisoners sat shoulder to shoulder in containment pits, open-air metal coffins lined with damp mats and biometric sensors. Some wept. Others stared blankly ahead. But in the far corner of cell block D, a prisoner was humming. The others turned. Slowly, quietly. Jonah heard it too through the vent. It was an old Earth tune, simple, rhythmic, haunting. An ancient sea shanty, the kind sung by sailors who knew they'd never see land again. Someone else joined in, then another. Soon, it spread like wildfire through the cells. Wordless hums gave way to lyrics, the song carrying the weight of every scar, every loss, every loved one buried in ash. Lo the night, and red the sky. Let fire be our final cry. The Dominion guards stirred. One of them, the creature with the tallest dorsal spines, let out a warning growl. It activated a sonic baton and smashed it against the cell bars. But the song didn't stop. It got louder. Jonah grinned in the darkness. That was his signal. He dropped from the vent like a predator, slamming onto the back of the guard. With a bone crack, he wrenched the alien's head backward and twisted until the neck snapped like brittle steel. The baton clattered to the floor. He grabbed it. Rise. He roared. The prisoners exploded into motion. All across the deck, the containment field surged as the Dominion scrambled to respond. But it was too late. Jonah hurled the baton through the control console, sparks cascading as the energy grids failed. Shackles unlocked. Prisoners surged forward, grabbing weapons, tackling guards, ripping out implants with bloodied fingers. It wasn't organized. It wasn't clean. It was rage incarnate. Jonah fought like a demon. He ducked a plasma whip, rolled forward, and drove a stolen spike blade into a guard's chest. Blood, purple and steaming, splattered his face. Beside him, a miner from Ganymede tackled a war beast and wrapped chains around its neck, riding it to the floor with a scream. A woman who'd lost her entire family to a fusion blast grabbed a Dominion rifle and opened fire with tears in her eyes. The walls ran red. Freedom didn't ask for permission. On the Dominion warship Velhara, High Executor Corthix watched the prison barge's beacon vanish from his tactical display. A silence fell over the command bridge. Report, he snapped. His aide, a thin, translucent thing with 8 limbs, faltered. The human barge has detonated. Reactor overload. Total loss. Including one of our dreadnought escorts. Corthix hissed. Cause. A pause. Sabotage. The prisoners rebelled. Over 1,000 killed in the explosion, and 1 dreadnought lost with all hands. The silence deepened. Corthix stared at the screen as the Dominion fleet drifted above the ruined moon of Protea Prime. The humans were supposed to be done, broken. This rebellion was supposed to be meaningless. But something in his gut, a sense older than logic, twisted. They're choosing death, he muttered, over surrender. Another aide, this one cybernetically enhanced, spoke up. It is illogical. They have no hope of victory. Corthix's mandibles twitched. That's what makes them dangerous. Back on Earth, General Reyes watched the transmission from a smuggled data pod intercepted hours after the Zervatha 12 detonation. The footage, fragmented and shaky, showed Jonah Cade's bloodstained face staring into the camera. This is for Titan, he growled. For Europa. For every colony you turn to glass. We are not your cattle. We are not your subjects. We are the last breath you'll take before you drown in your own blood. He held up a makeshift detonator. You can burn us alive, but we'll make sure you burn too. The screen cut to static. Silence fell in the war room. Reyes exhaled slowly. That's going viral. Across Earth's resistance channels, the footage exploded like wildfire. It was bootlegged into city-wide hollow projectors. It was broadcast on hijacked Dominion frequencies. It was painted in blood across ruined walls from Mexico City to the Himalayan bunkers. Better ashes than chains. It became more than a slogan. It became a vow. Domino effect rebellions erupted inside Dominion-controlled zones. Slave barracks in the Pacific Arcology rose up in synchronized fury, using industrial machinery as weapons. The remnants of the African resistance carved Dominion armored columns to pieces using magnetic mines and spears. In the broken shell of Tokyo, surviving citizens used underground aqueducts to collapse Dominion walker legs with collapsing bridges. The war was no longer just survival. It was defiance. A week later, Mara Voss stood on the deck of the rebuilt Resolute, now jury-rigged with scavenged Dominion tech and patched hull plating. She stared at the wall display flashing red with uprising reports. Bet they didn't expect that. Her new second-in-command, Commander Altensky, muttered. They still don't get us, Mara said. They don't know what it means when a human has nothing left to lose. Alta nodded. You saw the footage? Mara didn't answer, but her hands curled into fists. Yeah, he said softly. Me too, from behind them. One of the young ensigns walked up, barely 20, fresh from a training colony that no longer existed. Ma'am, he said, there's a new transmission from Europa. Resistance cells took back the lower vaults. They're using the tunnels to manufacture pulse bombs. Locals call themselves the Ashborn. Mara grinned. The galaxy set us on fire, she said, and we became the flame. She turned toward the comms officer. Get me Reyes. We're about to give the Dominion a lesson in pain. At Dominion High Command, Executor Korthix stood in the cold chamber of the War Tribunal. They demanded answers. They got silence. Finally, one of the council hissed, why have you not ended the humans? They refused to submit, Korthix said simply. Another snapped, then exterminate them. Korthix shook his head. They are not like other species. They are not broken by pain, not silenced by loss. They resist extinction like it is sacred. We kill one, and 10 rise. We destroy a city, and they carve war machines out of the rubble. They worship resistance. The chamber darkened. One of the elder architects of the Dominion leaned forward. Then perhaps, they are the fire we feared. And across Earth, as cities smoldered and skies cracked with war, graffiti spread across every wall in the resistance zones, painted in blood, etched in plasma burns, scratched into Dominion corpses. We are the ashes of surrender. We are the last scream of the dying. We are humanity, and we do not kneel. Beneath the cold, hollow sky of Luna's dark side, the ashes of the Martian colonies still drifted in the void. 1 million souls had lived there. Engineers, miners, terraforming crews, families, children. Now there was only silence. Mars was gone, cored by Dominion planet crackers and turned into a lifeless husk. Its atmosphere stripped, and its oceans boiled away in hours. Earth's last outer bastion had died screaming, and the Dominion hadn't even slowed down. But humanity wasn't finished. Not yet. Black Site Novum, buried 10 kilometers below the Antarctic crust, was never meant to be used. Built in the final days of the Second Colonial War, it had housed only whispers and shadows, the forgotten sons, the last of Earth's unregistered, augmented war veterans. Enhanced with early gene splicing and neural warfare graphs, they had fought in the dirtiest, bloodiest engagements the galaxy ever saw, then vanished. Officially, they'd been decommissioned. Unofficially, they'd been buried with their secrets. Until today. General Elias Reyes stood at the center of the cryovault, surrounded by rows of cryopods glowing with pale blue light. Each one housed a living legend, their names wiped from history, their war crimes sealed by the United Nations Security Council. Now humanity needed them again. Wake them, Reyes said. The AI guardian, Ariel, hesitated. These units are unstable, General. Mental cohesion is acceptable enough. Reyes snapped. We don't need saints. We need killers. Steam hissed as cryopods unlocked. First to rise was Colonel Arlenvec, call sign, Reaper 1. Metal plates reinforced his shoulders. Half his skull was replaced with combat-grade alloy. His eyes glowed blue from retinal implants burned into his optic nerves. His chest bore the mark of the old Earth Tactical Command, scorched into the flesh. He stepped forward, dripping cryogel, and looked Reyes straight in the eye. Who's the enemy? Reyes handed him a datapad showing orbital footage of Mars, cracking like an egg. Vec nodded. Guess we're needed again. Behind him, other pods opened. 10, 20, then 40 more. Dozens of soldiers walked out of time, born in war, made for one thing, to finish it. In the remains of Nairobi Sector 7, Lieutenant Ava Zhang's guerrilla squad, codenamed Snow Wolves, were pinned behind the shell of an abandoned rail station. Dominion suppressor drones scoured the ruins, forcing survivors to shelter underground. The drone's shrieking pulses fried flesh and vaporized stone with merciless precision. Zhang was down to 16 members. No reinforcements, no evac, but she had a plan. She motioned silently to Specialist Musa, who nodded and slipped through a crumbling sewer hatch. 3 minutes later, Dominion fire shifted, and the drones began exploding mid-air, one after another, metal rain clanging against the cracked concrete. Zhang grinned. EMP trip mines? Musa reappeared, charred but alive, and a prayer. Zhang pulled out her comms. The signal was weak, but clear. Alpha Wolf to command. Nairobi breach is clear. Survivors rescued. Dominion drone unit crippled. Still alive. Still fighting. A pause. Then a voice replied, calm, cold, and deep. Reaper 1 here. Acknowledged. Zhang blinked. Reaper? I thought that unit was dead. Vec cut in. Not yet. She swallowed. Glad to have you back. Glad someone remembers us. The reconquest of Earth began that day, not with fleets or firepower, but with old ghosts and broken soldiers. On the Dominion command vessel Hastrin, High Executor Corthix reviewed the updated battle logs. Something was changing. Resistance cells once disorganized were now synchronized. Tactical strikes occurred with impossible timing. Supply lines ambushed. Orbital relays destroyed. Commanders assassinated. Kill ratios were worsening. Humans were adapting. He didn't understand it. His species were apex tacticians, genetically bred over millennia. But these humans? These stubborn, screaming, dying things, they kept pushing back, fighting even when their throats were crushed. Corthix studied the latest reports. There was a name that kept reappearing. Vec, a myth, they claimed. But the Dominion had started assigning death squads to eliminate him. All had failed. Now, a new term had begun circulating among the Dominion warriors, the Unkillables. In the shattered remains of old Sao Paulo, Maravas and Commander Alton Sky led a liberation strike on a Dominion garrison built inside the burned-out husk of a megamall. Inside the ruins, the air was thick with acid mist and gunfire. Humans and Dominion tore each other apart in narrow corridors, stairwells, and ruined cafes. Mara fought like a woman possessed, knife in one hand, plasma revolver in the other. She kicked a Dominion guard through a shattered glass atrium and dove behind a broken kiosk, reloading. We got 10 minutes, Sky shouted. Extraction windows tight. I need 5, Mara yelled, sprinting for the prisoner cages. They were built into what used to be a children's amusement zone. Metal bars surrounding frightened civilians in torn clothes and blood-streaked skin. Mara opened the cell locks manually, fingers shaking with rage. You're free. Move fast. Take what you can carry and follow the green flares. A boy, no older than 12, grabbed her hand. Are you soldiers? He whispered. Mara knelt. We're your vengeance. That same night, across the reclaimed sectors of Europe, the Forgotten Sons launched Operation Revenant, a multi-pronged offensive that took back key communication towers in Paris, Warsaw, and Kiev. The battles were savage, hand-to-hand in flooded subways, cloaked insertion through radiation zones, booby-trapped ambushes in the snow-choked remnants of Iceland. One footage stream, leaked and spread through resistance channels, showed a lone unkillable fighting off 5 Dominion shock troops with a titanium pipe and 1 remaining grenade. The caption? We bury our dead standing. The Dominion retaliated with orbital bombardments, desperate to stem the tide. It didn't work. In a secret briefing room under Mount Weather, Reyes addressed Earth's new war council. 3 months ago, we were scattered, broken, waiting to die. He looked around at the commanders, Mara, Zhang, Sky, Vec. But now? Now they bleed. Now they retreat. You see what's happening? He clicked the holomap. Red markers, Dominion-held zones, flickered and blinked out one by one. We're no longer reacting. We're choosing where to hit, when to hit, how hard. He leaned forward. This war is no longer about surviving. It's about winning. Someone asked, and if we can't? Reyes's voice was iron. Then we make sure they remember what it cost to fight us. In a temple-turned Dominion bunker deep within the ruins of old Kyoto, a lone human scribe, Aiko Matsu, sat in candlelight, carving names onto a titanium slab. Soldiers' names, civilians, children, a shrine for the dead. But below it, etched into the wall with her own blood, was something more. A vow. We were made of stars, but we chose to burn in fire. So let it be written, no matter the pain, no matter the loss. We never begged, we never broke, and we never forgot what it meant to be human. Humanity had lost planets, but not their vow. Beneath the ruins of Shanghai's substructure, where sunlight hadn't touched in weeks and Dominion patrols stalked the shadows, humanity had become something else. Not survivors, not rebels. Weapons. Lieutenant Janica Torres dragged herself through the collapsed rail tunnel, her left arm limp and soaked in blood. Her breath steamed in the cold. Her legs trembled from adrenaline crash, but her eyes, those burned with molten fury. Behind her, a team of Dominion hunters stalked through the rubble, led by a seeker tall, thin, armored in obsidian glass, with a rotating crown of sensory feelers. It clicked as it walked, sniffing through darkness like a machine bred from nightmares. But it wasn't the seeker Torres feared. It was what she was leading it toward. 2 hours earlier, Janica had detonated an entire support pillar of Shanghai's mid-level arcology, dropping a Dominion resupply convoy through 6 floors of reinforced ferrocrete. That alone had earned her a death warrant, but her real mission lay deeper. Beneath Sector 9, in the abyss of old Earth infrastructure, was Forge 13, one of humanity's last arcane projects, buried when the UN declared it too dangerous, shut down because what it created shouldn't exist. Janica reached the final security door. Her blood was needed for clearance. She slammed her thumb on the rusted scanner and whispered her name. Torres, Janica. Code word. Never fall. The door hissed open. Inside, 100 red eyes blinked. They weren't surveillance systems. They were waiting. 30 minutes earlier, General Reyes stared across the hollow table, where Earth's liberated zones were slowly growing like sparks on a soaked battlefield. But the casualties were staggering. Even as Dominion ground forces fell, orbital supremacy still belonged to the enemy. And the longer the war dragged, the more civilian losses mounted. Humanity needed a hammer, something to make the stars afraid of them again. Reyes looked at Vec. How many did we bury in the forges? Vec's jaw clenched. Too many. But the project works? Vec nodded. Barely. But it'll kill gods. Reyes hesitated for only a second. Then, reactivated. If they see us as monsters, let's show them what we become when we're hunted. Inside Forge 13, Janica Torres faced them. The Echoborn. Not soldiers. Not machines. Screams made flesh. The Echoborn had once been human, volunteers, terminal patients, broken veterans, all offered a single question. Do you want to become the last thing your enemy sees? Their bodies had been reforged through war steel grafts, cybernetic implants, and something stranger, an AI neural echo loop that allowed them to remember their death and fight harder because of it. They did not sleep. They did not feel pain. They did not retreat. But they remembered everything. Janica stepped forward. Echoborn Unit Delta. Time to wake up. One of them, Echo 07, moved first. A woman once named Naima Al-Basri, now little more than carbon exoskeleton and ghost fire eyes. Her voice was static choked, but calm. We still alive, for now. Then point us at something that bleeds. Outside Forge 13, the Seeker found the door. It turned its head, twitching, interfaced with the Dominion hive mind. Human signature found. Orders. A reply pulsed back. Enter. Cleanse. Exterminate. The Seeker stepped inside. Darkness welcomed it. And then came the screaming. In the command core of the Resolute, Mara Voss received the encrypted signal. Dominion Battalion annihilated. Location, Forge 13. Survivors, unknown. Attached was footage, grainy, flickering, showing a black-armored humanoid ripping a Seeker in half with its bare hands and impaling 3 Dominion soldiers with its own ribcage before detonating. Alton Sky swore aloud. Reyes really turned on the Forge. Mara said nothing. She knew what this meant. There would be no going back. They'll fear us. Alton muttered. Even if we win, we'll be something else when it's done. Mara's voice was steel. Then let them fear us. We were born in dirt and blood. It's time they remembered. 3 days later, the Battle of Zion Crater began. Dominion forces launched a full-scale orbital assault on Earth's western hemisphere, deploying shock infantry and tunneling siege engines into resistance strongholds. Reyes ordered the first deployment of Echoborn into open combat. They didn't arrive by drop pod. They came through the ground, burrowing like demons beneath the surface, emerging amidst Dominion ranks like living missiles. Their weapons were integrated into their arms. Their screams overloaded Dominion comms. Their movements blurred, inhuman, terrifying. Echo 07 crushed a Dominion captain beneath her boot and hissed into the war channel. Zion is burning, so we burn brighter. Let them choke on our fire. In under an hour, 70 Echoborn wiped out a Dominion landing zone meant to pacify half the continent. The survivors didn't flee. They begged for death. In orbit, High Executor Korthix stood on the bridge of the Dominion dreadnought Utarian. He watched Zion crater from space, his instruments registering catastrophic losses. His generals whispered about demons, cursed humans, vengeful ghosts. He watched one Echoborn tear through his elite, dragging plasma blades through flesh and metal with surgical precision. The creature stared directly into a skycam. Into him, its eyes burning red. A message came through. Not text, not sound, a feeling. We are what you made us. On Earth, Resistance Networks detonated 6 more orbital launch towers, crippling the Dominion's resupply chain. Civilian militias coordinated under global comlinks now linked to the Breakers, Mara Voss's elite Black Ops team. Each squad wore the old Earth flag on their shoulders, a tattered banner no longer for unity, but for vengeance. In Lagos, a squad of Echoborn marched side by side with untrained teens, scavengers armed with scrap shotguns and stolen drone parts. When the battle ended, the teens cried. The Echoborn didn't speak, but one of them, Echo 21, handed a boy a bloody Dominion rifle and nodded. "We don't fight for glory," he said. "We fight so you never have to become us." On Mount Weather, Reyes received a new report. The Dominion were withdrawing key assets, pulling their commanders back, consolidating. They were preparing for a final strike. Good. Reyes stared at the wall where the names of Earth's dead were etched in steel. He ran his fingers along the fresh ones. "You came to burn our world," he whispered. "Instead, you lit a furnace." He turned toward the War Council. "Prepare Phase 4. Activate every cell. Light the beacons." Zhang nodded. Mara Voss strapped her armor on. Colonel Vec loaded his plasma axe and grunted. "Been too long." And as Earth prepared for the climax of its darkest war, from the heart of Forge 13 came one final message broadcast across resistance channels, loud enough to reach the Dominion dreadnoughts, cutting into their encrypted signals. "We are not the species you tried to enslave. We are not your prey. We are hearts of fire. We are eyes of steel. We are the children of a dying sun. And you tried to take that from us. Now, we take everything from you." Space belonged to the Dominion. Every nation that once claimed mastery of the stars had been driven back. Earth's orbital ring lay in shattered silence, its stations crippled or converted into Dominion fortress nodes. Automated defenses circled above like vultures, watching, waiting. For months, they rained fire down with impunity. For months, humanity bled. No more. UNDF Strike Carrier Vanguard. Geostationary launch window. 0943 hours. "Make peace with whatever you believe in," Commander Alton Sky growled over the intercom as the assault hatches lit green. "We're not coming back until that ring burns." He was clad in reinforced exo-armor, the eagle crest of old Earth still etched on his shoulder. Scorch marks crisscrossed the plating, each one a memory. Across from him stood Mara Voss, helmet clipped to her side, eyes dark and determined. She gave no speech, no rallying cry, just checked her sidearm, gripped her rifle, and nodded. Time to take the sky back. The drop pods launched one after another, screaming from Vanguard's underbelly like bolts of vengeance hurled at the heavens. Inside Pod 7, Sky and his fire team braced as gravity inverted, then vanished. Alarms blared. Atmosphere trembled. And then, impact. The Dominion orbital platform Velcriton, a weapons relay node the size of a city block, shuddered as the pod slammed through its lower hull. Fire and chaos bloomed. Humanity had entered the battlefield. Zero-G combat deck. Dominion platform Velcriton. Dominion defense drones opened fire the instant hull breach was detected, unleashing bursts of searing plasma and sonic waves. The air, or what was left of it, became shrapnel and screams. Mara spun through the carnage, her mag boots failing as a blast tore a hole in the corridor ceiling. She drifted into the void, sighted a Dominion gunner across the breach, and let loose with a magnetic bolt rifle. The round punched through the alien's skull, coating the bulkhead with purple mist. She activated her tether and pulled herself forward, slamming onto the platform's inner core with practiced fury. "Vanguard actual, breach achieved. Secondary assault route clear," she said, voice steady. "The sky's ours to take." Sky's voice crackled back. "Make them bleed." Inside the Dominion command chamber, An overseer drone screeched a warning through high-frequency war tones. Unauthorized incursion. Human pods. Multiple breach points. A Seeker Prime turned to the core's defensive AI, its mandibles vibrating. Deploy the Void Eaters. Dozens of metallic creatures unfolded from the walls. Spider-like monstrosities designed for vacuum combat. Their limbs were tipped with molecular cutters. Their minds were synced to the Dominion's oldest war algorithms. They had no fear. They had never lost. Until today. Outer Hull, Deck B. Reaper 1, Colonel Vec, led the Echoborn Vanguard through a blown-out maintenance corridor, his armor steaming in the cold void. Beside him, Echo 07 dropped to one knee and launched a blade drone swarm through a shattered vent, painting her visor with movement data. Targets incoming, she said. Voice calm as static. Void Eaters. 40 plus. Climbing the hull. That cracked his neck. Let him. He activated his forearm cannon and fired a micronuke into the corridor wall. The detonation sucked 3 Void Eaters into space. The rest kept coming. Echo 19 leapt forward, body twisting mid-vacuum, and sliced through 2 with her arm blades. Bloodless, elegant, terrifying. Vec grinned. You called us monsters. Now you get to meet them. Earth Command, Mount Weather. General Reyes watched the battle unfold via uplink, his knuckles white against the edge of the table. Above Earth, were bloomed like fireflies against the velvet dark. Dozens of tiny red markers indicated human pods. One by one, Dominion nodes were lighting up, firing defensive beams, calling reinforcements. And yet, the pods kept landing. Mara's signal pinged green. Skies, too. The Echoborn squadrons were carving kill zones into the platform's AI matrices. Reyes turned to his staff. How long until we can launch orbital beacons? A tech replied, if Velcriton goes dark, 20 minutes. Earth's grid can begin transmitting again. Reyes nodded slowly. Then bury them in orbit. Central Power Core Velcriton. Mara and Sky rendezvoused at the base of the Dominion's central node, a vertical chamber of pulsating energy, guarded by elite biomech hybrids armed with antimatter spears. Can't go up the shaft, Sky muttered, ducking under a burst of molten plasma. Mara glanced at the exposed coolant system. Then we go through. She fired into the pipe. It burst, flooding the room with freezing vapor. The Dominion warriors hesitated, their optics blinded. That was the opening. Mara dove through the mist, fired 3 rounds into one hybrid's jaw, and kicked it into the fusion pit. Another lunge for her. Sky caught it midair and drove his bayonet through its eye. In seconds, the chamber was clear. Set the beacon. Mara tossed the uplink node to Sky. He stabbed it into the floor. The node activated, and across Earth, humanity's uplinks flared to life. The sky was no longer silent. High orbit. Dominion Response Fleet. High Executor Corthix watched the transmission with growing horror. Impact in 30 seconds. Mara looked out the window at the sky, no longer lit with fire, but with hope. Vec emerged next, dragging a wounded Echoborn who had half his helmet torn off. Sky limped behind them, face bloodied. A resistance convoy found them an hour later. Not one of them had stopped moving. Broadcast from Earth, all resistance networks. Dominion orbital superiority has been broken. We lost cities to the stars. Now the stars are bleeding. Our people are still dying, but we are no longer running. To the darkness above, we say this. Bury us in orbit if you can. We'll turn your graves into launch pads. In the frozen ruins of what was once Baikonur Cosmodrome, a storm raged. Icy winds howled through collapsed launch silos and rusting gantries. Shattered domes of old Earth tech lay cracked open, stripped for parts by both humans and aliens alike. But deep beneath the storm, in a vault untouched by time or mercy, something stirred, and humanity was coming for it. UNDF Infiltration Team, Oblivion Spear. Subsurface level, Baikonur Complex 0320 hours. Captain Ava Zhang wiped blood from her visor, her hands shaking from exertion. The corridor ahead glowed a dull, hellish red, Dominion lighting, engineered to strain human eyes and unsettle their balance. The walls pulsated, alive with bioelectric currents that hummed like dying voices. 3 of her squad lay dead behind her. The others pressed on. They were 20 strong when they landed. Now they were 7, and they were close. Zhang turned to her second-in-command, Sergeant Malik Okoye, who was limping from shrapnel in his thigh. He still held his rifle steady, his breath ragged but calm. We reached the vault, she whispered. We shut down whatever they're building. And if we can't, she looked him in the eye. Then we make sure no one walks out. They moved deeper through the facility, past breeding chambers filled with half-formed Dominion larvae suspended in stasis. Each one blinked with a rudimentary awareness, embryonic monsters designed to spread fear before their first breath. Specialist Andre, the team's engineer, placed charges at every chamber they passed. "Can't leave these things alive," he muttered. "Too many ghosts already." They reached the inner core within minutes. Two massive doors stood before them, etched with strange sigils. Dominion glyphs glowed like embers, resisting translation even through neural augments. At their center was a singular control panel, pulsating in rhythm with something alive behind the walls. Zhang raised her comm. "This is Oblivion Spear. Reach primary target. Awaiting encryption relay for vault breach." A pause. Then General Reyes' voice came through, choked by static. "Zhang, that door. Intel says it's not a weapons cache. It's a neural archive, biological, older than the war." Zhang's heart stopped. "You're telling me this isn't a command center?" "No," Reyes said. "It's the core of Dominion memory. Their entire species origin. A living vault." Malik blinked. "Why the hell would they keep that here?" Reyes didn't answer at first. Then, "Because they were hiding it from their own kind." Zhang's fingers hovered over the panel. "What's inside?" Reyes sighed. "We think it's a truth they were too afraid to face." The team stared at the door. It felt like a grave, and they were the shovel. Above orbit, Dominion Dreadnought Jatel Verne. High Executor Korthix snarled at the screen. "They've found it," he hissed. "The archive. They've reached the last door." His generals hissed among themselves. One urged orbital annihilation. Another called for a counterstrike. Korthix silenced them with a raised claw. "No, that vault cannot be destroyed. If the humans learn what we did, if they understand how this war truly began, it will end not with their extinction, but ours." "Then send everything," one general pleaded. "Every available soldier. Now." Korthix turned to the fleet commander. "Unleash the Otherborn. Burn the planet if you must. Just seal that door." Baikonur Vault. Inner Sanctum. The Dominion system screamed as Zhang activated the control panel. The doors rumbled. Light spilled from the seams. The air warped with electromagnetic pulses so strong her visor glitched and rebooted. The pain in her skull felt like a blade driven through her thoughts. Then the doors opened. Inside was no treasure, no artifact, no superweapon. It was a being, suspended in a chamber of fluid, encased in a halo of circuitry and bone. Humanoid, thin, pale, wired into the facility itself. Its eyes fluttered open, black orbs rimmed with swirling starlight. It looked at Zhang, and it spoke. "You finally came." Her voice caught in her throat. "What are you?" "I am Dominion's first voice. Its first dream, and your greatest mistake." Zhang raised her rifle. "We've made a lot of those." "Then make one more," the being whispered. "Listen." And it began to speak. Visions flooded their minds. Eons ago, the Dominion were not conquerors. They were created by an ancient civilization that feared the chaos of organic life. The Dominion were the answer, a species designed for control, obedience, and order. But something went wrong. Their creators vanished. Dominion leadership erased history, rewritten by automated AI synapses that feared entropy above all, that feared humanity's chaos. The vault was built to hide that truth, because humanity wasn't just the next threat. It was the mirror, the one thing they couldn't assimilate, couldn't predict, couldn't destroy. Malik collapsed, nose bleeding from the mental overload. Zhang fell to her knees. The vault being reached out through the ether, gently touching her mind. "You burn too brightly. You fight too hard. You love too fiercely. Dominion does not understand you. It only fears what it cannot dominate. That is why they will never stop." Zhang's voice cracked. "Then what do we do?" "You do what you always do, Ava Zhang. You rage." Incoming transmission. Earth Defense Grid. General Reyes received the data burst from Baikonur seconds before the Dominion jamming field activated. His eyes widened. "Get me Voss. Now." Mara's hologram flickered in. "We've got a problem," he said. "More orbital assaults?" He shook his head. "We were never the real enemy." Baikonur surface, 15 minutes later. The sky tore open. Dozens, hundreds of Dominion drop pods descended in a burning storm, carrying Etherborn shock troops and suicide bombers. The entire crater exploded in a crescendo of fire and screeches. Zhang and her team were still inside. Malik armed the last of the plasma mines. "We're not getting out of this one." Zhang looked back toward the chamber, where the vault being remained. "You said we're the mistake they feared. You are the choice they never gave themselves. Then we'll show them what it costs to bury the truth." She turned to her team. "Blow it." They wired the core, set charges, and activated the failsafe. The last thing Zhang saw was the stars above and the fire rising to meet them. Global broadcast. Final message from Baikonur. This is Captain Ava Zhang. We've uncovered the truth behind the war. We are not fighting monsters. We are fighting our own reflection, manufactured, broken, desperate to stay in control. They fear us because we still remember what it means to choose, to love, to die for more than function. This is not just a fight for survival anymore. It's a fight for the future of choice itself. Tell them we opened the last door. Earth Resistance Command, Mount Weather. Reyes lowered his head. She opened the door. Mara's voice came over the comm. Then let's walk through it. The rain wouldn't stop. It poured across every continent, washing over battlefields, mass graves, and ruined cities. In old Tokyo, in the flooded catacombs of the Rhine, across the bombed husks of North Africa's megacities, it rained ash and blood and silence. And still, Earth stood. Inside Mount Weather, General Elias Reyes stared at the massive hollow projection above the war table. The Dominion's orbital presence had thinned after the Worldbreaker's final assault, but new readings were coming in. Hundreds of energy signatures, all converging. They were preparing a full-spectrum cleanse. No more diplomacy, no more puppeteering. The Dominion was coming to erase humanity entirely. Reyes ran a hand through his white-streaked hair and turned to his war council. Mara Voss, Colonel Vec, Commander Altenskai's empty chair, and 100 others patched in via hollow from across the world. Guerrilla leaders, warlords turned allies, rogue AIs, even exiled orbital miners now operating as mercenary fleets. Baikonur wasn't just a loss, Reyes said, his voice low. It was a beginning. He tapped a switch. Ava Zhang's last transmission played again, her voice ragged but defiant. We opened the last door. Tell them this is no longer just about Earth. It's about what comes after. Make it mean something. Silence. Then Mara stepped forward. You want meaning? She unslung a burned, blackened flag from her shoulder and slammed it on the table. The old Earth banner, scorched, blood-stained, and full of bullet holes. Then we give them one. Operation Ashval. The plan was simple. Burn their gods. Break their systems. Make them bleed. Earth would strike first. Every corner of the planet rising in synchronized, scorched earth retaliation. Not just to defend territory, but to make the Dominion feel pain for every lost city, every incinerated child, every unsaid goodbye. Phase 1. Obliterate every Dominion foothold left on Earth. Phase 2. Infiltrate and destabilize Dominion command worlds. Phase 3. Drive a stake into the heart of the Empire. It would be suicide for most, but this was no longer about survival. It was about vengeance that echoed forever. Tehran Strike Zone. 0400 hours. The city had once been one of Earth's last holdouts, a fusion of old-world resilience and new-world resistance. Until the Dominion launched a neuroplague that melted 1.2 million minds in 72 hours. Now it was a graveyard and a target. Mara Voss stood on the cracked roof of a pre-war hospital with her rifle slung and her lungs full of dust. Next to her, Echo 07 checked her pulse cannon, its barrel humming. Detonation teams are in position, Mara said. Payloads set on the reactors. Dominion squads. Echo 07 asked. Too many. Perfect. A flick of her hand. A pulse on the comms. And hell fell from the sky. They called them ash arrows. Improvised kinetic strikes guided by Earth's repurposed orbital debris, dropped like thunderbolts from exo-Atmo launchers hidden in the Alps and Andes. Tehran lit up like a sun dying in anger. Glass, bone, blood. Mara's team stormed the Dominion relay station during the chaos, breaching corridors lined with flesh cable and burning eyes. They fought through a dozen Dominion shock units, blade to blade, breath to breath. Before Mara reached the core, she set the charge, looked around at the symbols carved into the alien metal. Zhang died for this, she whispered. Then, let's give her an empire to burn. Cape Town, Old America, Eastern Steppes, Moscow, the fire spreads. Across the planet, Ashval ignited. In Cape Town, war engineers collapsed Dominion terraforming spires by turning power relays into molten storms. In the Siberian steppes, guerrilla bikers chased down transport mechs and lured them into frozen crevasses where plasma mines awaited. In Old America, underground cities reemerged, bringing entire towns that had vanished into darkness back into the war, armed, angry, and waiting. Even broken satellites began relaying hacked Dominion frequency scramblers, disrupting their coordination. The Dominion began to fracture. And then, the final signal came. Mount Weather, the message that shook the stars. The Resistance broadcast a single, unfiltered message through the broken void, hijacking Dominion comms and projecting it across every channel: audio, visual, neural. The speaker, a teenage girl in scavenged armor, 13 years old, standing on the corpse of a Dominion warlord with a flag of Earth wrapped around her shoulders. Her voice trembled, but her eyes were fire. "My name is Lyra. My parents were cooked alive in their house. My brother was eaten by a machine that screamed his name. I've been fighting since I was 9. You told us we were animals, inferior, that we should kneel. But guess what?" She raised a rifle. "I've killed 7 of you, with my own hands, with no training, with rage in my throat and fire in my chest. We are not afraid of you anymore. You took our homes, our sky, our peace. But you forgot one thing. You made us monsters too. And now we're coming. Orbital Dominion Fortress, Vorik Prime." High Executor Corthix smashed his data tablet against the bulkhead. The message had played across every Dominion world. Even their young had seen it. Now rebellion was flaring up in their own sectors. Uplifted client races once enslaved were rising. Weapons were being turned inward. "Contain this," he ordered. But his subordinates hesitated. "We cannot," one said. "They are afraid." Corthix growled. "Of what?" The reply came, not in words, but in a whisper carried across neural link from a panicked fleet commander. "Of dying like humans do." The Forge reawakens. Back on Earth, Forge 13, once thought lost, sent a burst signal. Deep inside, the last of the Echoborn activated. Echo 01. The first, the blueprint. She had been asleep for 2 years, her mind a shattered loop of screams and equations. But now she stood, her eyes opened, her voice returned. "They called us weapons. They forgot we were people first." And with that, she joined the final push. The Ash Vow, a new creed. In every bunker, every trench, every shattered cathedral of war, Resistance fighters began whispering the same oath, a call passed down in quiet mutters and carved into blades and walls. "We were made of stars, but we learned to burn. We do not kneel. We do not forget. And when we die, we scream your name into the dark." Asterisk. Endgame begins. As Operation Ash Vow reached its crescendo, Reyes gathered the last commanders at Mount Weather. "We've crippled their orbital control. Their ground armies are in retreat. Their fleets are infighting." He turned to Vec, who stood scarred and armored beside Echo 01 and Mara. "It's time to do what we were born for. Retreat." Vec said with a grin. "No," Reyes said, staring at the stars. "We take the war to their world." There were no stars here, only dark matter drifts, cold radio echoes, and the dying embers of a war that had clawed its way beyond the solar system. The last recorded human vessel to leave the system was Endurance 7, a generational arc. It didn't come back. But now, humanity wasn't running. It was chasing. Aboard the UNS Heartspear, Mara Voss stood on the forward bridge, her reflection flickering across the carbon-black viewport. The Heartspear was the flagship of the Iron Veil Spearhead, a coalition fleet of Warry-built frigates, Dominion wreckage hybrids, and a handful of Etherwarp jumpers salvaged from pre-invasion Black Labs. Their destination, Cernith, one of the Dominion's oldest strongholds, located at the heart of the Black Spine Nebula. A world of poison winds, sky cities, and the central Dominion mine nexus known as the Continuum Vault. "ETA to Cernith?" she asked. 17 minutes, said Lieutenant Rafik, hands dancing across the neural comms. Mara turned to Echo 01, standing beside her in perfect stillness. The Echoborn leader's voice came like wind through wire. "They will be waiting." Mara didn't blink. "Let them." Spearhead fleet formation. From Earth's surface, 300 ships had launched. Fewer than 180 survived the void corridor. Solar flares tore through shielding. Dominion ambushes claimed entire squadrons. One vessel, the Justice Fall, detonated mid-jump, its fusion core crushed by quantum interference. But the rest? They kept moving. Among them, the sky below, a converted mining rig loaded with thermal bore guns. Echo Wrath, housing 20 of the last functioning Echoborn. Hammerlight, once a cargo ship, now a dropship housing the Sons of Ash. Each crew carried no illusions. This wasn't conquest. It was retribution. Cernith orbit. Battle commences. As the fleet emerged from jump, alarms screamed across all decks. Dominion defense nodes activated instantly, hundreds of automated sentry craft, hull razor drones, and Siphon-class missile silos firing from every angle. Plasma lances lit the void. Missiles tracked, hulls shattered, but humanity had come with new weapons. Commander Vec led the first strike in the sky below, using deep drill kinetics to bore through Cernith's upper defense satellites. His battle cry echoed across all frequencies. "You burned our skies, now taste your own fire." Down below, breach capsules rained like molten hail. Human soldiers descended with drop packs, armor stitched from ceramic plate and echoborn bioalloy, their helmets glowing crimson in the dark. When they hit Cernith's surface, they didn't stop to speak. They slaughtered. Surface. Dominion City Ring a Carol. The first combat zone was a Carol, a floating city ring tethered to the upper atmosphere, built on cyclonic gas towers. Dominion nobility resided here. Thought untouchable, that illusion died quickly. Zhang's remnants, her wolves, landed on a Carol's east spire, storming palatial towers and smashing windows with breach charges. Private Denny Kale, barely 18, took 3 Dominion officers out with a flare gun and a salvaged thermal blade. Her hands bled, her face was burned, but she kept moving, because this wasn't war anymore. This was memory on fire. In the inner sanctum, Echo, 07 and Mara found a Dominion governor trying to flee in a stasis pod. He pleaded in broken Terran. "Please, I'm not like the rest. I never." Mara raised her rifle. "You watched." She pulled the trigger. Dominion broadcast. The fracture begins. With Cernith burning, Dominion channels lit with distress calls. The Continuum Vault had never been attacked in their species' history. Now, their god-mind center trembled. On the throne world Carithel, younglings began to riot. Entire Dominion subclans went dark, fleeing into exile. Dominion elites argued. How had humans reached them? Why hadn't the vault protected them? And in the vault itself, something cracked. Something woke up. The Continuum Vault, buried at the core of Cernith, protected by liquid atmosphere and layers of bio-coded security. The vault was a vast neural lattice. Billions of stored personalities, memories, and tactical subroutines. Humanity wasn't supposed to know it existed, but Reyes had known, because Baikonur had revealed everything. Echo, 01 led the breach team through the underhalls of the vault's perimeter. Oxygen scrubbers failed. Dominion resistance swarmed. For every step forward, another soldier fell. Lieutenant Haru was pierced through the stomach. Private Ramirez detonated himself at a corridor junction to buy 4 seconds. They moved forward anyway, because inside the vault was the thing that made the Dominion unbeatable. And if they destroyed it, the whole empire would collapse. Echo versus Echo. Inside the vault's heart, Echo, 01 found Echo Prime waiting. A failed prototype. Dominion's first attempt to replicate Echoborn tech. A fusion of stolen human neurocode and Dominion biological memory strands. It looked like her, moved like her, but it smiled like death. "You think your fury makes you righteous?" Echo Prime hissed. "You are meat carved into metal. You are the same as me. I remember every scream." Echo, 01 whispered. "You enjoyed them." And then they charged. The fight shattered the vault's interior lattice, steel against steel, scream against silence. Sparks rained like tears. As the human forces triggered the self-destruct of the lattice nodes, Echo, 01 pinned Echo Prime against the central cortex. "This ends with us. I am perfect." Echo Prime screamed. "You were programmed." Echo, 01 detonated her fusion core. The vault erupted in light. Orbital collapse. Dominion defense systems shut down across Cernith. Fleet command links severed. Ether core ships detonated from command confusion. In orbit, the Hammerlight opened up with its railgun spine, tearing Dominion destroyers in half as human vessels surged forward. Mara watched the sky collapse from the Heartspear's main deck. She closed her eyes. "Is it done?" "No," Reyes said, "patched in via quantum relay from Earth. But it's ending." The price of fury. Back on Cernith, bodies littered the spires. Not just Dominion. Human. Children who had grown up without a sky. Veterans who hadn't spoken in years. Fathers, mothers, monsters. All the same now. Ash, blood, silence. Mara picked up a child's broken transmitter. It still buzzed. She heard a faint recording. Lyra's voice. "We were made of stars, but we learned to burn." Her eyes welled. For the first time in years. "Was it worth it?" she asked aloud. Colonel Vec limped beside her, coughing blood. "Ask me tomorrow." Across the stars, echoes spread. Dominion worlds began to fracture. Client races rebelled. Dominion loyalists turned on each other. Entire fleets defected. And through every shard of that empire, The same message echoed like thunder. The humans have reached the vault. The humans have burned Cernith. The humans are coming. The vast starfield stretched infinitely, a canvas of cold darkness pierced only by distant suns and the cold glint of warships. In the center of this void hung the jewel of the Dominion Empire, Nihaltar Prime, a world of swirling storms, shattered moons, and fortresses carved into mountains of living crystal. It was the last bastion, the final throne of a dying empire, and humanity's last battlefield. Iron Veil Spearhead Fleet. At the vanguard floated the UNS Heartspear, scarred but unbroken. Behind it surged the battered fleet, human ships, hybrid vessels, and the Echoborn's bioengineered dreadnoughts. Commander Maravas stood on the bridge, every inch the warrior forged by decades of fire. Her eyes scanned the Dominion orbital defenses, thousands of warships arrayed in an impenetrable web, missile flares blossoming like deadly flowers. She turned to General Elias Reyes, whose presence was a calm island in the storm of war. "This is it," Mara said. Reyes nodded. "We go in knowing there's no coming back, but also knowing there's no other way." Behind them, soldiers prepared for the ground assault, dropships ready to breach Nihaltar's atmosphere and bring the fight to the heart of Dominion rule. The battle ignites. The fleet moved as one, a tidal wave of fire and metal. The Dominion responded with everything they had: plasma storms, railgun barges, swarms of drone fighters, and gravity mines that twisted space itself. Heartspear took the brunt, its hull glowing red-hot under the onslaught. Mara barked orders. "Focus fire on the eastern defense ring. Vec, coordinate the boarding teams. Echo 01. Ready your bio-dreadnoughts for planetary assault." Outside, space tore open as railguns fired and plasma lances clashed. Boarding the Leviathan. Vec's boarding party, scarred veterans, desperate fighters, and the last remaining Echoborn, launched toward the Dominion Leviathan, a colossal battleship serving as the Empire's mobile citadel. Inside the Leviathan, the air was thick with the stench of blood and machine oil. Echo 07 led the assault, moving with silent precision, cutting through Dominion officers and robotic sentries alike. The corridors echoed with the screams of the dying and the relentless clatter of war. Vec's voice crackled over comms. "We've breached the command bridge, taking heavy fire, but pushing forward, the heart of the Empire." Meanwhile, Mara's ground force descended on Nihaltar Prime. The surface was a brutal mix of natural crystal formations and twisted alien architecture, towers that seemed to pulse with living energy. The Dominion elite awaited them, genetically enhanced warriors with armor forged in starfire, their eyes cold and merciless. The fighting was savage, every inch contested in blood and fire, sacrifices and resolve. General Reyes stood on the bridge of Heartspear, coordinating fleet maneuvers while simultaneously transmitting to Earth's scattered remnants. "Remember this day," he said into the comms, "when humanity looked into the abyss and chose to fight." Aboard the Heartspear, alarms blared. Critical systems failed. Mara's voice was steady. "We hold until ground forces secure the planetary core. Then we detonate the fusion charges." Echo 01's last stand. Deep within the Leviathan's core, Echo 01 confronted the final defense. The Dominion's supreme AI intelligence, the sovereign mind, an entity more machine than thought, more thought than life. Their battle transcended flesh and steel, a war of wills within the neural lattice of the ship. Sparks flew, code clashed, and for every blow Echo 01 landed, the sovereign mind retaliated with lethal precision. But Echo 01 was human too, fueled by memories of loss, rage, and the burning will to survive. With a final surge, she unleashed the fusion core override, triggering a catastrophic meltdown. The collapse. Outside, Nihaltar Prime shook as ground forces detonated charges deep in the planet's crust. The Leviathan exploded in a starburst of fire and debris. Dominion ships faltered, their command chains severed. The Heartspear limped through the chaos, battered but triumphant. Mara looked to the horizon of stars, the Iron Horizon, the dawn of humanity. General Reyes addressed the surviving fleet. "We came as refugees, hunted and broken, but we rise as legends." He turned toward Mara and the others. "This war is over, but our story is just beginning." Legacy. Back on Earth, children would learn of the Iron Veil Spearhead, of the women and men who fought with fist and fury, of sacrifices made in the cold dark, End of the horizon humanity reached, not just a line in the stars, but a promise that no matter the darkness, no matter the odds, humanity would never bow.